Hello everyone, my name is Hyder Abbas. I welcome you to the series of Spring Boot Framework, or you can say Spring Framework. What is the difference between Spring Framework and Spring Boot Framework? Practically, you will understand in this series. Spring or Spring Boot Framework, both of them are same with slight difference, which practically you will understand. I'm going to start this series from absolute scratch, covering all the major modules of Spring Boot. Fine. So there are some prerequisites before you get into this playlist is what I would like to highlight here. The first prerequisite is strong knowledge of core Java. Not just knowing core Java, you should be very much comfortable with core Java. I have trained more than 20 batches in Spring Boot since the time of COVID from 2019-20. I have trained more than 10,000 professionals in the live courses on Spring Boot and microservices. Fine. I had also trained more than 50 Java batches. So with the extensive training experience, developing experience, and using the Spring Boot experience, what I have felt is Spring Boot happens to be, or you can say Spring Framework is one of the most easiest framework, provided you know the prerequisites correctly. So before you get into this prerequisites, or before you get into this Spring Boot playlist, you must be strong in core Java. There are many resources available for Java. You can find out in the same YouTube channel, T-Shape YouTube channel also. And you can search for any other resources. Make sure you are comfortable with Java before getting into Spring Framework. Fine. Now, the next part is, will you teach Spring Framework or will you teach Spring Boot? Spring Boot is Spring Framework only. There is not a different framework. It is Spring Framework plus auto configuration. It is Spring Framework plus auto configuration plus some extra features. What are those? We will try to explore practically. I'll focus more on writing the code and trying to explain you the concept, and I'll not be using any of the PPTs in the entire playlist. It will be a simple board work, all the diagrams and whatever I have to explain. But I'll try most of the concepts to explain by writing down the code unless it is required for me to draw and explain you. So Spring Boot is Spring Framework only, but auto configuration and some extra features. Practically we will understand. Initially we'll understand why Spring Framework, what is the problem Spring Framework is trying to solve for Java developers, and how to work with that framework, how to communicate with framework in the sense configuration, how you can activate this framework. We will understand through the XML approach, through the annotation approach. Then we will use the Spring Boot and we'll understand how Spring Boot is different. If you don't use Spring Boot, how to work with Spring Framework, and if you use Spring Boot, how easy to work with the Spring Boot. And once you get that, once we get into the ecosystem, then all the other modules, Spring Data, JDBC module, Spring MVC, building the REST APIs, everything we will learn with the Spring Boot only. Fine. So most of the series will be on the Spring Boot. Initially, we'll understand Spring Framework without the boot, just to understand, just to have an idea what is the difference between Spring Framework and with boot, Spring Boot, Spring Framework and some extra features. What is that? Practically also we will understand. So core Java is the prerequisites. Apart from that, if you have an idea on JDBC, Hibernate, Servlet, it is added advantage. You need not to master at those skills even if you just watch any of the videos, or just try to understand the ecosystem, how JDBC is used in the application. If you just watch some 10-15 videos from any sources of your own choice, Hibernate, just to understand the ecosystem of that, it will be better to understand some of the modules of Spring Boot in a better way, but not a must have. But again, I would like to highlight core Java, you need to be very, very good. Fine. So by keeping that in mind, that those who are participating in this playlist, those who want to watch everything, they know core Java. I would like to start the journey from absolute scratch. I will not be talking any of the terms about Spring Framework. It is this, it is that. No, we will write the code. We will understand what is this. I'll not be telling that Spring Boot is a versatile. Spring Boot supports the actuators. We have a concept of HTOs. Nothing. I'll not be talking on those terms. Practically, we will understand by getting into this. Fine. So I have used the Spring Boot framework for my work. I have trained the freshers. I have trained the working professionals. I have done many corporate trainings on Spring Boot. With my rich experience of the audience, I'll try to simplify to the best of my ability from the scratch till the advanced level, including the microservices. I will try to cover in this series. Make sure to connect me on the LinkedIn. You can just search Hyder Abbas on the LinkedIn. You can connect. Also, you can follow me on my Instagram. You can find the ID in this video. Fine. So thank you so much for now. Let's start the journey of Spring Boot framework from absolute scratch from the next video. Thank you again.